All right, today we're going to talk about a word that you probably think you know inside and out, hippie. But we're going to explore how its meaning has evolved, really following this journey from, a kind of cultural uniform to something much, much deeper, a personal state of being.
And it all kicks off with this really personal thought. Right away, that line just sets the stage for a deeper look at identity, at time, and what it actually means to be awake in the world. And honestly, I think that's something a lot of us can connect with.
Okay, so let's start where this whole journey begins, with that classic, stereotypical image of a hippie from the 1960s. This is the version we've all seen a million times in old photos and movies, right? I mean, it's like a checklist, isn't it? You've got the hair, the music, the protests, constantly questioning everything. And oh yeah, you can't forget the beat-up van. These were the symbols, the uniform, really, for a whole generation just trying to figure itself out. But it's so important to remember, this was not just about fashion or music, not at all. Underneath all of that tie-dye and sound was something very real, a constant fear of the Vietnam War. I mean, for young people back then, this wasn't some distant political debate. It was a life-or-death reality that basically fueled that entire counterculture movement. And here's where we hit a really crucial turning point. Because as time goes on, all those external things, the costumes as they're called here, they start to fade. But the questions that sparked everything in the first place, man, those stick around. And that's where the meaning starts to go a whole lot deeper. So that brings us right to the heart of this whole idea. We're about to move past the hairstyle and the van to get to the real, original meaning of the word hip. The actual root of the entire concept. So this forces us to ask the one question we probably should have started with. If it's not about the hair or the clothes or the van, then what is a hippie? What does that word actually mean? And the answer is actually pretty simple and powerful. Before it got attached to anything else, to be hip just meant to be awake, to be aware, to be tuned in. It was all about seeing the things other people missed and really paying attention to the world around you. And that's really the core of it, isn't it? Being a hippie isn't something you wear. It's an internal choice. It's a fundamental refusal to just sleepwalk through life. It's all about being actively conscious. Okay, so if we take that core definition, being awake, let's look at how that actually showed up back in the 1960s. And man, it was an energy that was pointed straight outward. The sleepwalking they were rebelling against was super specific. They were pushing back against the silent acceptance of war, against this rigid conformity where everyone had to be the same, and against staying quiet when things were wrong. They were just done with blind obedience and living these phony plastic lives. And believe me, their response was anything but quiet. Back then, being awake meant being loud. It was a very confrontational kind of awareness. We're talking slogans, marches, and literally shouting back at a system they believed was just plain wrong. Okay, but now let's jump forward a few decades. The energy is totally different. The core idea of being awake is still there for sure, but the way it's expressed, it makes this huge shift from shouting to listening. So let's compare the energy. The rebellion of the 60s, that's described as this really young energy, the kind that almost needs an enemy to fight against. But the modern version, it's framed as a more seasoned, mature perspective. It's way less about fighting some enemy out there and a lot more about finding meaning inside yourself. And you see that same exact shift in the focus. It moves from pushing back against the world to tuning into it. The whole language changes, It goes from rebellion to this much quieter search for mystery, for patterns, and for your own inner fire. Okay, I absolutely love these metaphors. The 1960s hippie is like a spark running through a crowd. It's energetic, it's contagious, it spreads. But the 2020s version, it's a quiet, alert listening post. See the difference? It's just as aware, just as awake, but it's quiet, and it's taking everything in. And this brings us to the final stage of this whole evolution. It's the journey from a costume, something you can put on and take off, to a posture, something that's just part of how you are. And here they are again, right? The classic costume pieces, the tie-dye, the beads, the bell-bottoms, the slogans. Back then, you could just try this stuff on. And look, for some people, it was deeply authentic, but for others, it was just a look for a summer. And here's the big takeaway. Now there's no costume left. That whole uniform is gone. So what remains? It's not a look, it's a posture, a fundamental way of being in the world. So what does this posture look like today? Well, it's about questioning what society tells you is real. It's about choosing meaning over just what's useful.
It's about letting your mind wander, and maybe most importantly, it's about choosing truth even when it's uncomfortable. This is the grown-up version of being hip.
Which leads us to this beautiful, full-circle conclusion. The realization here is that being a hippie wasn't something to be outgrown. It was something to finally grow into. It wasn't some phase to leave behind. It was a deeper way of seeing the world that really only comes with time.
And that really leaves us with something to think about, doesn't it? The costumes, the music, the politics, all of that changes from one generation to the next. But that core idea of being awake, of refusing to just sleepwalk through your own life, that's absolutely timeless. So the question for you is, what does it mean for you to be awake?